You guys have heard the saying before that you cannot pay a debt with a debt. And no one ever really explains exactly what that means. Don't worry, I got you covered. Okay, guys, so in this video, I want to go over with you the definition of non-legal tender and how you can use your bill of exchange, your drafts, your promissory notes in order to settle a quote-unquote debt. I found some mistakes that I have made in the past that I want to clarify, and I'm going to do so in this presentation regarding non-legal tender. I'm going to go very slowly over this so that you can grasp exactly what it is that I'm trying to convey to you. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about HJR 192 and some of the misconceptions surrounding that public policy. All right, so on the agenda, the first thing I'm going to hit on is non-legal tender versus legal tender, okay? In the second slide, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth regarding legal tender and how that differs from non-legal tender. I'm also going to clarify some misunderstandings that I've had in the past regarding legal tender and non-legal tender as it pertains to, for example, I made a statement in the past where I said promissory notes are the same as cash, and that is not true. And I'm going to explain. I'm going to talk a little bit about HJR 192, the rules for non-legal tender, and we're going to go over some do's and don'ts when using non-legal tender to settle a debt or an account. Non-legal tender refers to any form of payment or value, such as checks, electronic transfers, credit cards, promissory notes, or company script that is not officially recognized as legal tender under U.S. law. You can find this definition of legal tender in 31 U.S.C. section 5103. Unlike legal tender, Federal Reserve notes and coins. Okay, so in the first sentence, unlike legal tender. Okay, so legal tender is only Federal Reserve notes and coins. Anything that is not physical Federal Reserve notes and coins is considered non legal tender. Non legal tender is not required to be accepted for debts or transactions unless agreed upon by the parties involved. It is often valued in US dollars but depends on mutual consent for use in trading or debt settlement. So, the only thing that you can do with non legal tender is trade it, such as transfer it, or you can settle a debt with it. Okay, that's it. There's nothing else that you can do with non legal tender. Let's use Chuck E. Cheese, for example. You guys, some of you guys are my age, some of you are younger, some older. Um, but if you've ever gone to Chuck E. Cheese, if you guys remember back in the day, when we would go, your parents would take physical cash and they would give it to Chuck E. Cheese in exchange for Chuck E. Cheese tokens, okay? And so once the cash was given to Chuck E. Cheese to exchange for tokens, you could not change those tokens back into dollars. You can't do it, okay? So once you have, let's say, if you wanted to get $20 worth of tokens, once your parents paid the $20 and we received the tokens, you guys remember they would give us like a little cup and they would give us a certain amount of tokens that were equivalent to the $20 that our parents paid. And so the only thing that you could do with the tokens, you could go to another kid within Chuck E. Cheese and say, hey, I'll give you these amount of tokens if you give me a slice of your pizza, or if you give me some of your cotton candy, or share some of your tickets with me. I'll give you a couple of coins in exchange. Okay, so that is an example of using non-legal tender and trading. Okay. Also, what you could do is when you played games, those games gave you tickets. Okay. And so, in order to settle up with Chuck E. Cheese at the end of the game, you had to settle up because now you've taken the $20 and you've played all of these games and you got tickets that you really can't do anything with. And so you go over to like the Chuck E. Cheese shop, and you know, in the shop they have stuffed animals, they have footballs, basketballs, coffee mugs, they had all these different candy. And they had all these different type of things that you can trade your tickets in exchange for. That is an example of settlement. Okay, so think of non-legal tender, okay, as Chuck E. Cheese, those Chuck E. Cheese tokens, okay? Now, could you take those Chuck E. Cheese tokens to, let's say, Six Flags, right? Could you take those tokens to Six Flags and say, hey, I got these Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Can I use them here to play your games? It's likely that Six Flags would say no unless Six Flags has some sort of agreement with Chuck E. Cheese where it's okay to use tokens from Six Flags Great America in Chuck E. Cheese, and it's okay to use Chuck E. Cheese tokens inside of Six Flags Great America. If no such agreement exists, you typically cannot use those Chuck E. Cheese tokens in Six Flags Great America. You can only use them inside of Chuck E. Cheese. I hope that was a easy way for you to understand non-legal tender. It is not the same as the money your parents used to get the tokens, okay? However, with the Chuck E. Cheese tokens, it usually had a U.S. denomination, okay? And the reason for this U.S. denomination was so that you would be able to understand how much value you're getting for this $20. It does not mean that the Chuck E. Cheese tokens are equivalent to the dollars, the $20 that your parents use to get the Chuck E. Cheese tokens. It does not mean these two things are equivalent. It is just a way for Americans, okay, people who are purchasing tokens on behalf of their children to be able to understand the value that they're getting, okay? Legal tender is currency officially recognized by U.S. law as acceptable for paying public and private debts. It includes Federal Reserve notes, paper currency like dollar bills, and U.S. coins, quarters, and dimes issued by the U.S. Treasury through the Bureau of Engraving and Printings and the U.S. Mint. Creditors and businesses must accept legal tender for debts unless a contract specifies otherwise, per the Federal Reserve. Legal tender is like quote unquote real money, dollars, that everyone must accept, unlike non legal tender. For example, checks, promissory notes are only accepted by agreement. Okay, so before I made the statement that with promissory notes, a promissory note, if you took a promissory note to, let's say, a dealership, okay, in order to purchase a vehicle, that promissory note is the same. Let's say the vehicle was $20,000. If you issue a promissory note with the denomination on the face of the instrument, remember, in the Chuck E. Cheese example, just because you see 20,000 US dollars on the face of the promissory note, that is so that you would understand the value. It does not mean that this promissory note functions like cash, okay? It doesn't and it cannot. If the promissory note functioned like cash, that could be a form of fraud, okay? So, that was a misunderstanding on my part by stating that the promissory note functions the same as cash like Federal Reserve notes. They do not function the same way. However, non legal tenders such as promissory notes, debit cards, ACH transfers, wires, all of those are forms of non legal tender. Non legal tender does not function as legal tender, okay? So if a debt was created using non legal tender, and if you decided to use legal tender to settle the debt, legal tender has to be accepted by law to settle the debt, okay? But there's an exception. I don't want to give you too much at once, okay? So I'm going to slowly segue into that exception. There was also a misconception with individuals. I've heard in the past other individuals, their interpretation of HJR 192. And after reading HJR 192 a couple of times, I started to realize exactly what was the purpose of this public policy. Okay, why did they pass this? And if you think about what was happening at the time, okay, think of a game of Monopoly when you're playing Monopoly, okay? The only way to finish Monopoly is once one player has technically bankrupted all the other players, and now this one player is in possession of everything. They got all the hotels, they got all the houses, they have all the railroads, they have literally everything. And so now in Monopoly, if you guys ever played it to the end, the only thing that you could do in Monopoly at this point is to reset, okay? But how could you reset if only one person has all the money? One person beat out everyone else. They hold all the silver, they hold all the gold, okay? They hold everything. So, what do we do to kind of level the playing field? And you guys have heard this before, that government's job is to make sure that everything is fair. Well, HJR 192 was the most reasonable resolution by stating that, listen, we're in a Great Depression. If you look at the time that it was passed, okay, it was 1933 when it was passed, and the Great Depression happened in 1929. So think of 1929 as the Monopoly game literally coming to an end, okay, and now we have to reset. And so a response to this crisis in 1933 was that, listen, only one person has all the gold and silver, and I'm this is not literal, okay? I'm just using that as an example. Obviously, it was more than one person that had all the silver and all the gold. And so what they did was that they nullified that, listen, these people don't have gold or silver, so how can anyone trade or barter or exchange if the only form of money or value is gold or silver? Okay, so to make things fair, okay, it was declared that debts could be discharged with legal tender, such as Federal Reserve notes or coins. Okay, so they suspended the gold standard so that now people who did not have gold could transact with each other. Okay, so that's e- everything has a downside to it, guys. I'm not saying that it was the perfect resolution, but if you think about it, like I used the Monopoly game as an example, if we're playing Monopoly and I have everything, I got all the railroads, all the gold, all the hotels, all the houses, I got the banks, I got all the money, I have literally everything. How can how can trade continue forward if no one has anything to barter or exchange, okay, to be able to transact or settle debts, okay? So HJR 192, one of the misconceptions was that, oh, they took all the gold from, from the people. I think that is a misinterpretation. Okay, I don't think that's exactly what took place, that they were just confiscating gold and you have to turn in gold. I think what happened is what's happening now is that the game sort of was wrapping up, coming to an end. Money is becoming inflated. It can't afford anything. A group of individuals have amassed all the wealth of the country. Okay, and so now a reset needs to happen. Okay, or um, commerce is impeded. There is no trade. There is no, because no one has money. Think about our own markets right now. You have people that want to buy houses, but they can't afford it. The same was true back in 1933. I would like to buy a house, but I mean, the prices are unreasonable or the interest rates are too high, okay? And this typically happens when there's an imbalance in trade. Okay, because if there was a balance, then the prices would be consistent. Okay, house costs would be the same as it was 10, 20 years ago if trade was balanced. Okay, but it's not, it's very imbalanced. And so the side that is experiencing the effects of the imbalance, which would be us, it would be me, it would be you, um, yeah, we're feeling the pain of that imbalance, okay? Because it's difficult for the money that we hold really to afford anything. Okay, so HJR 192 is one of those public policies I think was misunderstood, okay? Also, I want you to keep in mind that HJR 192 declared that debts could be discharged with any legal tender. With any legal tender, okay, such as Federal Reserve notes instead of gold or silver. So those individuals that say that you can discharge your debts with a bill of exchange, they're mistaken. You can't. A bill of exchange is non legal tender, it is not legal tender. The problem that has happened in this new age depression, okay, this new age Great Depression, it's like we sort of feel like we're on the cusp of another Great Depression, okay? And it's been nearly 100 years since 1933. And it happens like every 100, 150, 200 years, these things, the game comes to an end, okay? And then everyone has to kind of, okay, we got to reset now, okay, and start all over again. So this is nothing more than history repeating itself. Okay, so the misconception is that a bill of exchange can discharge a debt. It cannot. The reason that a bill of exchange cannot discharge a debt is because the bill of exchange itself is non legal tender. Okay, so non legal tender cannot discharge a debt. That is a mistake. Okay, now there is an exception. Okay, there is an exception to everything. And I'm going to explain what that exception is. I don't want to get off track, so I'm going to continue forward and then we're going to talk about that exception to discharge. It's not discharge if you're using a bill of exchange. So discharge would not be the term you want to use because the bill of exchange is not considered legal tender. The term that you would use is extinguish. Okay, extinguish or settle or adjust is the term that you would use. You absolutely can use a bill of exchange to extinguish or settle or adjust a debt, but you cannot use a bill of exchange to discharge a debt. Only legal tender can do that. Okay, so the types of non legal tender. I think I said this to you guys in a previous video. The types of non legal tender, and most people think that non legal tender is legal tender. Okay, majority of the country believes this, that non-legal tender is legal tender. Okay, and so types of non-legal tender: checks, okay, written orders to a bank to pay a specified amount, electronic transfers such as ACH, bank to bank transfers, though that is digital currency. That is no different than crypto, okay? That is just a digital asset, okay? Electronic transfers, debit cards, credit cards, payment cards linked to a credit or bank account. That is non-legal tender. That is not physical cash money, okay? Just because you log into your account and you see that dollar sign, okay, next to the value of your account. So let's say you log into your account and you see $1,000. You just have 1,000 credits, okay? But the dollar sign is to help because most people in America, we identify a value by US dollars, okay? And so that dollar sign is just saying that, hey, this is the value, so that you would be able to understand the unit of account. But it does not mean that you have 1,000 Federal Reserve notes in your account, because those numbers are just numbers on a screen. Okay, so that is considered non legal tender. Okay, promissory notes, written promises to pay a sum of money. A promissory note is non legal tender. Bills of exchange, orders to pay a third party, is non legal tender. Company script, like Chuck E. Cheese cards or coins, okay? Or even when you get a paycheck from your job, that's considered company script. That is non legal tender, okay? Cryptocurrency, digital currencies like Bitcoin, is non legal tender. trade goods or services. Okay, so if you barter items or services in trade agreements, that is non legal tender. Gift cards, certificates, prepaid cards for a specific business or redeemable per agreement is non legal tender. Commercial paper, short term corporate debt instruments like corporate bonds are non legal tender. Okay, so simply put, the only legal tender that we have in circulation would be Federal Reserve notes. Okay, again, I made the mistake in the past by thinking that because a promissory note was in U.S. denominations, meaning like for a car, like the example that I previously used, if your promissory note has the dollar sign or it has 20,000 US dollars, that is just a unit of account. That is so that you would be able to understand the value of whatever item it is that you're trading or bartering for. Okay, remember, nothing, you don't pay for anything, you can't pay for anything unless you are physically holding legal tender, and virtually almost no one uses cash anymore. Everyone uses non legal tender to quote unquote settle debts, which you can't settle a debt with non-legal tender. Okay, so like if you have a mortgage and your mortgage is based upon this promissory note, which is also non-legal tender, the money that you're paying to for the mortgage out of your bank account is also non-legal tender, and technically that money that you're paying does not settle that debt. It can't settle it. Okay, so the only thing that you can do if you're dealing with an instrument that is non legal tender, checks, promissory notes, bills of exchanges, the only thing you can do is like the Chuck E. Cheese example with the tokens, is that you can trade with another kid or you can go to the gift shop and you can settle and adjust. That is it. You cannot do anything else with it. So when individuals say that you can't pay a debt with a debt, okay, that is true, but they don't elaborate on what that means, okay? And so when you think that you're paying off your mortgage or your car note by making payments every month, in reality, you're not. You really are not paying off anything. All you're doing is just transferring your credits that you earn from your labor. You're giving it away to some other person or some other company literally for nothing, because the only thing that you can do if you have a debt that is based on non-legal tender, the only thing that you can do is settle it. You that's it. You can't pay it off using other forms of non-legal tender. Nobody, you can't even do it. If you go into the bank and try to take out a large amount of money, the bank is like, oh yeah, we can't give you that. Okay, so the banks are limited in how much cash that they can give you at one time. Okay, and so now everyone is using non-legal tender. I even got tricked by it, okay? Because we've been using it so long that we think it's common or it's normal, okay? But just because something is common or normal does not mean that this is the correct way to handle or do something. This was one of the points. Like I always bring up Patrick in all my videos. He was making this point where he says that the corporations, okay, sort of they lead us into acting or behaving in a way that is not beneficial to us, okay? So by when you receive a promissory note, for example, and they tell you that, hey, this is just a promise to pay, Nowhere on this promissory note do they specify that, hey, this US dollar value, this is just a unit of account, okay? We're just using this dollar value so that you would have an understanding of how much a thing costs, okay? But this promissory note in no way, shape, or form should be confused with legal tender. And so, since they do not say that, everyone makes the mistake of believing that this promissory note is functioning like cash when it really is not. It can't function like cash. It is not. Your promissory note or your bill of exchange cannot function like it can't function like cash. That's a no-no, okay? It is a no-no to use non-legal tender for anything other than to transfer the credit, to transfer, or to settle. If you try to use the promissory note or the bill of exchange as if it is cash, you can get into trouble, because now you're trying to get something that is not legal tender to mimic or act as if it is legal tender. It's not necessarily counterfeit, but it is a type of fraud. And so I'm very glad that I was in the past, I had talked about doing checks, and there was a part of me that said, I think I should wait. I want to wait before doing this because I felt like there was some things that I was missing. I also felt like once I taught this that there are some individuals that would take this thing the wrong way and they would abuse it, okay? And that abuse would land them in trouble. And if you don't know how to kind of defend yourself from certain things, like if someone claims that you're committing fraud, you guys know that I always say you need to understand the definition of fraud. Fraud usually carries intent, okay? You have to be able to prove that you know what I was thinking, that my intent was to deceive, my intent was to defraud, okay? And so if you cannot prove that that was my intent, I truly believed, okay? Like I'm just giving you an example of individuals that, like if they do a thing and they find themselves in a situation and they don't know how to defend themselves from the accusation, well, you need to be able to understand the accusation. But fraud is trying to conceal or hide something. I didn't hide anything. I used my name. I used my home address. I used my phone number. If I was trying to hide or conceal my identity, I would have used like a shell company or a trust that doesn't identify me, or I would have used someone else's identity. Okay, so no, this does not fit. Your accusation of fraud does not stick. And so I was worried that, people would not understand or know how to defend themselves, if let's say a bank or anybody, the government, it doesn't matter who they are, they started to play games with you or they started to threaten you because you were doing something that technically you can do, okay? You can transfer credits from a bill of exchange, but it has to have certain language in it. You can't use language like pay to the order, okay? Because that sounds like a cash payment when you look it up. You can't use words like payee, okay? Because that implies that I'm paying you for something in legal tender when I'm not. That's a misconception. So, like when you guys look at loan contracts, for example, and auto loan contracts, and it says, oh, that this is cash value, that cash value is misleading, okay? And this is why even myself, I got tricked into thinking that my promissory note says it. I showed you guys my Alley Financial promissory note, and in the promissory note it says that this promissory note is cash value. And so my in my misunderstanding of cash value, I started thinking of like legal tender, like this is legal tender, like it's the same as money, when in reality it's not. And so technically, had I, and this promissory note, it's old. I've since gotten rid of the loan. I no longer have the loan. You guys know I showed you my title and I've shown you that I never paid off, the balance. Um, and not only that, I've received my $35,000 back using the IRS. So that's like a settled issue as far as I'm concerned. But that misled me when I read cash value, and these are what's called deceptive practices. Okay, that listen, this instrument that Ally Financial issued to me, it has US dollars denominated on the face of it, which kind of led me to believe that this was the same as cash. Nowhere in this instrument does Ally Financial specify that this is non legal tender, because if it specified that it was non legal tender, when you go and you look up what non legal tender is and how it functions, you find out that the only thing that you can do with non legal tender is trade it or settle it. That's it. Meaning, when you say to settle, you're telling Ally Financial that, hey, why didn't you just record the liability and settle the account? Okay, why didn't you not, with standard accounting, if Ally Financial has an asset, like think of it as depositing your paycheck into your bank, the same happened with Ally Financial. That non legal tender is treated as a deposit. It is assumed, okay, that at some point, like let's say that uh, promissory note had a $20,000 value, okay, we cannot treat it as cash, meaning I can't withdraw it, okay. So the only thing that you can do, once Ally Financial received the asset of 20,000, it had to record a liability of 20,000, and now the account would have been settled. That's it. There's nothing else you can do with non-legal tender. But because they use terms like the dollar sign, okay, they use USD within the note, they use terms like cash value, it led me to think that this was legal tender, when in reality it is not. It is not legal tender. It is not the same as cash, and it cannot be used, or it cannot function like cash. Okay, so the rules of non-legal tender. All right, acceptance by agreement. Non-legal tender, checks, promissory notes, ACH transfers, is accepted for trading or debt settlement only. That's all you can do, like the Chuck E. Cheese token. And every company you go to, they all have their own version. Think of, if you go to Ally Financial got their own Chuck E. Cheese tokens. And if you go to Capital One has their own Chuck E. Cheese token, okay? So all of these promissory notes that they issue, think of it like Chuck E. Cheese tokens, okay? It is non-legal tender. And the only thing that you can do once you get inside of Chuck E. Cheese, okay? Once you get inside of Chuck E. Cheese and you have already traded your Federal Reserve notes, which is the real legal tender, you have traded the legal tender for the Chuck E. Cheese money. The only thing that you can do once you have the Chuck E. Cheese money is that you can trade, you can play games, you can trade with other kids, and then you can go over to the gift shop, and then you can kind of redeem um, or exchange your tickets for cotton candy or a mug or a Nerf ball or Nerf gun, whatever they had in the store for you to trade with at that time. Okay. And so let me briefly segue into the Treasury. Okay, so the Treasury also issues non legal tender. If you've ever received a check from the Treasury, that check, okay, the Treasury is not exempt from um, using non-legal tender. It is still non-legal tender because it's not cash. It can be exchanged. Just because it can be exchanged for cash doesn't mean it will be or that you can. Because remember, a lot of these banks, these financial institutions have limits on how much you can withdraw from your account. Okay. So even with the Treasury, okay, so now think of the United States as a big casino. Okay. And Patrick, he used this very analogy where he tried to explain that the United States is nothing, like everything is just a casino, and you go in and you play the mortgage game, which is slots, and then you go over to the dealership and you play blackjack. Okay. Now once you're holding all of these um uh non-legal tenders. You got all these different promissory notes and things of that nature from all these different companies, okay? You should be able to redeem at the company, just like with Chuck E. Cheese, okay? So if you say, like, hey, I want to settle, okay? Typically, you should go directly to, like, if you went and played blackjack over at the dealership, okay, you should be able to go over to the dealer, or if the dealer, let's say most dealers don't keep these accounts, they kick them over to like Alley Financial or Capital One. Those are two of like the biggest, you guys know, that I use. So you should be able to go directly to Capital One and say, hey, I want to settle up, similar to Chuck E. Cheese, where you're going to check out, you're going to exchange for that Nerf gun or whatever. Okay, so just think of that as a form of settlement. No, you're not going to leave with Capital One with a Nerf gun, but you get your car. You get what I'm saying? You have to settle up. Otherwise, you're just walking around with Chuck E. Cheese tokens in your pocket and it's no good to you. Okay. So if you have difficulty with settling up at Capital One, then you can go to the Treasury. Hey, Treasury. Listen, I was out playing slots and blackjack and okay, and so I got all these Chuck E. Cheese tokens, and I need to come here to redeem them because I was not able to redeem them at the company itself. Okay, and that is the service that we're asking the Treasury to give us in the mortgage redemption. I hope that is simple enough, easy enough to understand. Okay, that is what we are doing when we go to the Treasury. Okay, we've been out here playing in the casinos and losing all of our money. Okay, and now we're going to the Treasury. Finally, we're trying to settle up. Okay, that's what we're doing with the mortgage redemption. Hopefully, that's plain enough for you guys to understand. Okay, so what I want to also mention to you guys regarding the non-legal tender, I hope you're taking all of this in, okay? I hope you got a pen and paper. I hope you're writing down certain points. Um, Listen to this several times over, okay, so that it can seep in. Another thing that you need to know, okay, about non-legal tender. Since your mortgage company, let's do mortgages, okay? Because you guys know that's the big one that I'm the most passionate about is the mortgage. Okay? Because that's the one that is causing the most havoc. With the mortgage, okay? Your contract, the promissory note. The promissory note says that you were given a loan. The contract itself says that you were given a loan by the mortgage company, okay? Which in reality is not accurate. You were not given a loan. The mortgage company paid the seller of your home on your behalf. That is called a third party payment, okay? In your contract, it should say that, hey, like for me, you guys know my mortgage servicer was Planet Home Lending. In the contract, it should say that, hey, we, Planet Home Lending, paid the seller of Christina's home on her behalf. Okay? It should say that. Otherwise, it's misleading to say that, well, we gave Christina a loan, because what it looks like on paper is that Planet Home Lending gave the money that I needed. They gave me the non legal tender. Remember, no one does anything in cash anymore. So even if they wired, even if they Western Unioned me the money, on paper it looks like they gave me some form of non legal tender. Okay? It appears that they gave me some form of non legal tender in order to pay for my home, and that's not how the transaction went. You didn't give me money to pay for my home. You paid allegedly, you allegedly paid the seller on my behalf, and you never specified that within this contract, okay? One of the things you want to do in settlement and closure. Okay, and this is in the ebook, not the ebook. Well, I'm going to talk to you guys about that, because I found a way that I'll be able to release a settlement and closure as an ebook for those of you who are needing it like right now. And then I'll also hold a certain number in book version, because I have some individuals that they absolutely hate um, reading from a computer. And I get that. I'm one of those people too. I hate reading from a computer. Okay, so back to settlement. Okay. One of the things you want to ask your mortgage company, and you want to get this in writing, okay? You want to ask them directly, how did you pay the seller of my home? And the reason that you're asking them this question is because you want to determine, what type of tender did you use? Did you use non legal tender? Did you pay the seller using a wire transfer or ACH? Did you issue a check? Okay. You want to know, because if they issued any of those forms of non legal tender, okay, equal protection under the law says, okay, that, hey, if they paid, this mortgage company paid the seller on my behalf using non legal tender, then guess what? I can settle up with you using non legal tender. You cannot change the terms and say that I have to pay you in, the only legal tender I can pay you in is cash, okay? None of your promissory notes say this. They have U.S. denominations. Do not confuse U.S. denominations with a payment type. There is no payment type listed there, okay? If you ask the mortgage company for a payoff, they are going to give you, oh, you can wire, you can Western Union, you can write us a check. These are all non legal tender forms of payment, okay? And so now you have direct evidence that, hey, you paid the seller in non legal tender, and, okay, you paid the seller in non legal tender, and now this payoff is listing all these forms of non legal tender. Okay, so what they're saying is that you can use non legal tender to settle. Remember, the only thing you can do with non legal tender is settle or transfer. You can't do anything else with it. Even if you decided, or you were tricked, like all of us were at some point, if you were tricked into making payments out of your bank account, all you're doing is just giving up labor credits. Okay, it is not paying the debt. I you would like to believe that it is paying the debt. Okay, you think that is paying the debt, and the mortgage company is leading you on to believe that it's paying the debt. In reality, it's not, because non-legal tender and non-legal tender does not equal legal tender. The only thing that can settle or discharge a debt is legal tender, and neither you or the mortgage company are using legal tender in this transaction. Okay, so listen to me closely, and I'm leaking a little bit of my book. You will succeed at this, okay? You will succeed at this if you understand what I'm saying to you. Okay? You're going to need the help of the court. The court has multiple sides of it, okay, that most people do not know about. There is a such thing as, if you don't want to open a lawsuit at the court, okay, let's say I don't want to file a lawsuit, okay, but I would like to use the court for evidentiary purposes. Okay, some of you guys have tried this on your own. You have tried settlement. You have sent bills of exchange. You have sent maybe a draft to the company, and you have tried settlement. Some of them have ignored your settlement offer. Some of them maybe have returned the instrument to you stating that they do not accept that form of payment. This is a lie. You have caught them being dishonest. Yes, you do. 99% of your business is you engage in the use of non legal tender. Okay, you need to understand. Hopefully this video help you understand non-legal tender, okay? And so you want to offer settlement in the purview of the court, and the court can do this for you. You would go down to the court. Listen to me, guys. You will go to the court, and you'll say to the clerk that, hey, I would like to open a miscellaneous file. Okay, a miscellaneous file does not open a court case. You are not in a lawsuit. Okay, it is not a lawsuit. You are not making a claim. Okay, but with the miscellaneous court filing, you can do this for an auto loan. You can do this for a mortgage, okay? I'm going to also update title acquisition to include this. And when I tried this, okay, I tried this on a client and they settled almost immediately. Listen to me. You will succeed, okay? You will succeed. While you're waiting on redemption, because you still want those non legal tender funds transferred to your account, okay? So, the mortgage redemption, you still want to do that, even though it takes 6 months to a year, and in some cases longer. You still want those proceeds, okay? However, if you're in a tight spot, such as foreclosure or repossession of your vehicle, okay? Foreclosures and repossessions, especially, you need to listen to me closely, okay? You want to go to the court. You want to open a miscellaneous file. The fee can be, I think we paid like 75 bucks. And this was a client, I don't want to name their state. That's okay. I can name, it's Rhode Island. Okay, so this is a client I had out in Rhode Island, and I think the fee was 75 bucks to open the case. Okay, I got the customer, the client, to open a miscellaneous file, okay, at the court. And remember, if you're just opening a miscellaneous file, this is solely administrative. It's solely administrative. It's not a lawsuit. You're using it for evidentiary purposes, okay? Because you want proof, and you want to do this under the eye of the courts, okay, to where you are offering settlement, okay, and you are offering settlement in non legal tender, the same tender that this alleged lender gave you. Now, the reason you are wanting to do this in the purview of the court is because it compels transparency on the part of the other party, which is Capital One, Planet Home Lending, Wells Fargo, whatever the name of your mortgage company or auto loan company is. As I said to you previously, some of you guys have tried this on your own. You sent your instrument, you did your certificate of service, your proof that you mailed this instrument to them, okay? And you guys don't hear anything back. They never respond to you, or they mail it back and they say, "Oh, we don't accept that," okay? And they start to play their reindeer games with you. This is what you do with the miscellaneous court filing. You open the file. The courts will ask you, would you like us to serve the other party? Your answer is yes. The courts will give you a document and they say, well, how would you like us to serve them? If the company is in your city or state and you can afford it, you can have the sheriff serve them. Okay, you can absolutely have the sheriff to serve the offer to them. Okay, and this would let them know that you mean business. Okay, now, if they are not within, they're not local to you, okay, they're not in your county, you wouldn't be able to use the sheriff. So you would have to use certified mail. The court is now the arbitrator. So the settlement offer is not coming from you, it is coming from the court, okay? And they have a short amount of time to respond to that settlement offer. Okay, in the settlement offer, we pretty much laid out all the facts. I requested a payoff statement, and in that payoff statement, I argued a couple of things. Payoff statements, it changes the terms, okay, of the contract because when you receive a payoff statement and they're like, let's say, let's use Capital One for example, and Capital One is like, they'll send you a statement, and on the payment statement, it'll be like, oh, well, you can pay, we have an account with Wachovia Bank, and this is the account number, and this is the routing number, okay? None of this information was provided to you in the original contract. So what you're looking at in real time with the payoff statement is a change in terms. They're changing it. They're changing something. You have to have known this at during the contract, okay? You had to have known, okay, so Capital One should have told you, hey, that if you decide to, to settle with us, settle up with us, here are the payment options. They do not do that. So you have no idea. I had no idea what is Wachovia. We never agreed this in the original agreement. You never stated to me, I don't know what this bank is. You're having me transfer credits into, okay? And so I leveraged that. I leveraged that information because I had the contract and I read the contract, and nowhere in this contract does it say if you want to make an early settlement or payoff, okay? I know they call it a payoff, but it's nothing more than a settlement. If you want to make a settlement, it doesn't say in this contract that we would be transferring funds to Wachovia Bank. You would have had to make this known to me at the time the agreement was made, okay? So that was one of the issues raised in the settlement letter. Also, I pointed out in the settlement letter that, listen, you accept all these forms of non-legal tender. You accept wires, Western Unions, you accept checks, you accept promissory notes. We know that you transfer these items. You accept ACH, you accept bank drafts, banker's acceptance. You accept all these forms of non legal tender for settlement. Even even like your payments. I use the payment, um, you know, the company keeps track of your payment. So what you pay to them, that is a form of non-legal tender. So when you transfer credits out of your bank account to the auto loan company or the mortgage company, that is non-legal tender. So I had all the evidence laid out in exhibits at the top. This is exhibit A, this is exhibit B, okay? And in my point in laying out these exhibits were to show that you absolutely accept non-legal tender. And here I am, okay, well, not me, but on behalf of my client, okay? So here I am offering settlement to you in a tender that you absolutely accept, okay? They accepted the tender. I'm going to ask, it's a married couple. I'm going to ask if they'll give me um a copy of their acceptance so I can post it to you guys and show it to you. Of course, I'll redact their name and like their personal information, but you need to see this letter. I haven't asked them permission to show it, so I won't. Um, but yes, the um, it wasn't discharge. We did not say discharge. We said extinguish this liability. That's a separate video where I have to teach you off ledger accounting and non-standard accounting. None of these people are following GAAP. None of these companies are under the Federal Reserve Act. None of them are. And I have to go over that in a separate video. So I don't want to like bombard you with too much information in this one video. But you absolutely, even in a repossession, you can do this same thing. It would work. But you want to do it in the purview of the court, opening a miscellaneous file, getting evidence that they absolutely accept non-legal tender. Because if you use non-legal tender to, let's say that they all say that, hey, we paid on your behalf. I'm not going to argue against that. I just want to know how you paid. Okay, well, we paid using a wire. Okay, thank you very much. That is non-legal tender. You use digital currency. Okay, a non-legal tender to pay, quote unquote, for my car. Let's say, for example, if you're in an auto loan. Okay, so you use non-legal tender. That means that I can pay you back with non-legal tender. And that is equal protection under the law. And you're getting this in front of the court. Okay, it's a state court you want to go to. If you're wondering, like, what court, what type of court, which court, it's the state court. Okay, all right, so I'm getting up to an hour. I want to show you the bill of exchange, and I will likely do that in a follow-up video where I show you the bill of exchange and we go over the language that you want to use in the bill of exchange you're going to use for settlement. You're not using a pay to the order. I think I said that in a previous video. Okay, you're not using a pay to the order. You're not calling the financial institution, whether it's a mortgage company or auto loan company, you're not calling them a payee. You're calling them a recipient. Okay, if you place US dollars, okay, on the instrument, you have to specify that it is non-legal tender. You want to be the party that does it the right way. So in the past, and I've seen individuals, their different bills of exchanges. Some people get through and some don't, okay? Because I guess they figured that, oh shit, this person is like, we don't want them to dig any further, so we're just going to, go ahead and grant their wish. Okay, so some people will get remedy, but and some don't. And I hate that. I really do. I hate when that happens. Okay, because if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If this individual is using bill of exchanges to settle accounts with Capital One, then anybody with an account at Capital One can use a bill of exchange to settle. Okay? So I'm going to show you that bill of exchange where we go over the language that you want to use on your bill. You want to remember, like, some of you guys already have a good idea of how to do your bill of exchanges. You were just missing a piece. This was it. This is it. You cannot put US dollar you can. If you put US dollar denominations on a bill of exchange, you have to specify that this bill is for settlement. That is it. It is for settlement and nothing else. I am not using this. I am not trying to uh, redeem it for cash. Okay. I'm not trying to do any of those things. I'm simply trying to settle. You will only use these bills of exchanges in settlements of auto loans, mortgages, credit cards, utility bills, etc. Okay? You will only use the bills of exchange for those purposes, but do not take them down to your bank unless you are seasoned and you know how to talk to the bank and explain to them that this is simply a transfer. I am not looking to cash, okay? So if you're not good enough yet, okay, to be able to articulate what you're doing, do not deposit this into your bank. You are going to use it only to settle up. If you are in a foreclosure or repossession, you can do this right now. Go to the court, open a miscellaneous file. The fees may vary by state, okay? Open that miscellaneous file, get your settlement letter. I'm going to put an example in the Dropbox for you. I'm going to put a example settlement letter and an example bill of exchange in the Dropbox. And you use that to facilitate settlement. And the court is going to ask you, how would you like us to serve the other party? If they are local and you can afford it, use the sheriff. If they are not local to you, meaning they are out of state, even if they're in another city, you send it certified mail. And then the courts will serve it the offer of settlement upon the other person. And remember, Wells Fargo, Capital One, Alley Financial, Planet Home Lending, they are a person. They're a person just like Christina M. Wilson. Okay, just like Jane M. Doe. They are a person. Okay, so you absolutely can use this right now. I am going to, uh, the settlement and closure will be released this upcoming week. Okay, it will be released this upcoming week. It will be available in an ebook version, but what you need to know is that it will come watermarked. Okay, and so I'm going to leave an example of what it's going to look like so you can decide if you want to pay for the ebook version or if you want the book version. Okay, but if you get the ebook version, it is watermarked with all your information, your name, it's watermarked with your email address, your IP address, okay? And so it's watermarked in the event that this ebook pops up somewhere it should not be. I know exactly who leaked it. Okay, so I will have an ebook version available this week. I will get the I will get the book to you guys. I swear it's going to be this week. No later than Friday, hopefully. Pray for me, okay? No later than Friday. I should have it ready. And like I said, I'm reading it over, making sure I've crossed my T's and dotted my I's, making sure that I've placed as much information in it as possible. I'm working on the course that comes along with the book to teach you this non legal tender. Okay, links that you can go to. You can go find this out at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve will tell you, oh, we have no dealings with non-legal tender. The only thing we deal in is legal tender. And then even when you call the Federal Reserve, call them and ask them questions regarding this non-legal tender so that they can blow your mind. And when you find out that the mortgage companies and the auto loan companies, they are just mimicking the Federal Reserve. They're not under the jurisdiction of the Federal Reserve. The Fed does not govern them because they are issuing their own instruments. And the Federal Reserve only governs non legal tender. Just because it's in U.S. denominations does not grant the Fed jurisdiction. That's a misconception. So when you're trying to get a house and they're telling you that the interest rate is 7%, you think that that interest rate is based on the interest rate set by the Federal Reserve, and it's not. That mortgage company is mimicking the Federal Reserve. They just made up their own interest rate. They just made it up. They just make it up. I'm also going to make this PowerPoint available for you guys in the Dropbox as well, so you can see the full slide. But I think we went over just about everything. The hot topics that I wanted to hit on. I wanted to make corrections to what I said before, and I honestly believed that promissory notes have cash value. They don't. And you know how you can check this. Let me give you guys a way. And I always tell you I want you to verify what I'm saying. Okay? Verify the stuff. Like verify what I'm saying. I'm not angry if someone says, "Oh, well, I think you might be mistaken in this area, or you might want to rethink this over or that over." um I'm not totally against that. It's just that, like, in certain experiences that I have had, I do not want another person to be able to influence. You can give me your opinion, and that's fine. But I try not to allow so many different people to influence what I think or believe without having like evidence that this is the case. Okay, so you just yelling in my face or sending me these angry emails, "Oh, you're wrong and you should do this and you should do that." Okay, I'm just going to ignore it because I have a set of beliefs in my mind about how this thing works, and I don't want too many other individuals to get in my mind to start to influence. And then it'll seem like, oh, well, now I'm saying I'm going in this direction and I'm going in that direction, or I'm starting to sound like someone else that you may know. Okay, which is something I do my best to stay away from. I do not want to sound like another person, obviously, other than Patrick, because that's who I follow. That's my teacher. But I don't, not my teacher. I'm not saying that I know you guys remember this whole big scandal where people were saying that I said that I was in Patrick's classes. I have never been a student of Patrick. When I say that's my teacher, I'm saying that in the context of that I listen to his videos and I take notes, um, and I apply, like I actually try, I attempt to do the things that he advises in his video. So that's what I mean when I say teacher. So hopefully it doesn't get taken out of context. So I will put this PowerPoint into the Dropbox. I'm going to put a settlement example and an example bill of exchange in the Dropbox, and you guys can use it right now. You use it right now if you are in repossession, if you are in a foreclosure and you're trying to settle. Offer the settlement. Okay, offer the settlement and leverage the transparency of the courts in order to get them to accept, okay, the settlement. Okay. Um, I think that's all I got for you guys. As always, it's good talking to you. Bye.